bombing of Pearl Harbor on the 7th of December 1941 brought the Second World War to American soil, ushering in the US's entrance into combat. The following day, the Walt Disney Studio in California became the only Hollywood film studio in history to be subject to military occupation, as it was seized by the government and partly turned into an anti-aircraft base housing over 500 US military soldiers stationed to defend neighbouring aircraft factories from Axis bombers. In addition, the government enlisted the help of Walt Disney and his studio team in the production of films aimed to boost national morale. While Walt was more than happy to serve his country in any way possible, this deal ended the, until then, uninterrupted 5-year period of creativity which saw the production of Snow White, Pinocchio, Fantasia, Dumbo and Bambi. Between 1942 and 1945, 90 to 95% of the Disney Studio's film and animation output was produced for the government and the armed forces, in the form of propaganda, training and public service films, restricting the studio's ability to invest in large-scale artistic productions, both in terms of budget and animators. The Disney Studio's previous films had taken a major hit at the box office, with many of them locked from release in Europe and any money made by the studio throughout Wartime in the UK frozen in the territory. With many of the studio's artists enlisted into the war effort and 90% of those left behind preoccupied with war films, those remaining 10% were instead tasked with creating smaller, more budget-friendly productions, while production on films including Peter Pan, Alice in Wonderland and Lady and the Tramp were all halted. Still experimenting with their craft, albeit on a reduced scale, artists came to develop the idea of the package feature, in which they could stitch together a collection of unrelated shorts to form an entire feature-length program, essentially spawning from the earlier Fantasia. The majority of these films utilised modern music and presented stories taken from the multitudes of idea scraps for shorts and features left floating around the studio, while 2 of them, Saludos Amigos and the Three Caballeros, were the result of a Goodwill trip the studio had taken to South America in 1940. This 7-year period would see the release of 6 commercially released animated feature films, none of which were particularly successful and most of which are today looked upon as some of the studio's lesser output. Known as the Wartime era or the package era, it spans the entire animated feature output from 1942's Saludos Amigos and 1949's The Adventures of Ichabod and Mr. Toad. Additionally, during this period, the studio also notably released So Dear to My Heart and Song of the South, both predominantly live-action films with sequences of animation, and feature-length propaganda film Victory Through Air Power. However, as none of these are considered part of the classics canon that I've been making my way through in these ranking videos, we won't be touching on them in this video. As we now find ourselves in another period of uncertainty amidst a global crisis, which has also seen the postponement of many major film releases, and in the commemoration of the 75th anniversary of the end of World War II, I aim to rank the entire 6 animated picture wartime era in order of my own personal preference. At that, let's get into it. Kicking us off at number 6, Saludos Amigos. This was the result of a government-sanctioned Goodwill tour of the Latin Americas undertaken by Walt and his staff in 1940 in effort to change wartime perspectives of the many Central and South American countries which had been plagued by Nazi influence. Walt's team, or El Grupo, toured the countries soaking up as many cultural influences as they could showcase, exotic locales, upbeat music and eccentric personalities. At only 42 minutes, the shortest movie in the entire Disney canon, Saludos Amigos isn't your standard Disney flick, almost playing out like an episode of Walt's anthology TV series. It's hybrid animation, live action, it's part comedy, part documentary, and well, part propaganda. Additionally, Saludos really stands as a sanctioned advertisement for Latin America, more so than anything else, though many of the segments actually fail to represent the culture accurately, with many overloaded with silly gags, which, while often funny, seem to go against the grain of what's trying to be done here. It's actually quite strange that this isn't considered part of the classics canon, not only due to its length, but because 17-minute animated feature Victory Through Air Power isn't considered. Though I guess that one is a bit more on the nose and this one, well, stars Donald Duck. The major saving grace of Saludos Amigos is its final segment, The Watercolors of Brazil, which debuted fan-favourite character José Carioca. It's a highly energetic, superbly animated segment which truly captures the character and personality of Latin America and is one of the most memorable segments from any of the early package features. 5. Make Mine Music. Following the two Latin America films, Make Mine Music was the first proper package feature. Out of them all, this is certainly the most hodgepodge of the lot. It throws together 10 shorts, all completely different and polarizing, with no concise theme or narrative structure to string them together. It's simply a collection of random shorts played one after another. Initially devised as a second Fantasia but with modern music, the film lacks both its artistic ingenuity and narrative flair. There's a few standout shorts, including the gorgeous Two Silhouettes, which sees two rotoscoped live-action ballet dancers inside an animated dreamscape. After You've Gone, a segment featuring experimental animation set to a Benny Goodman jazz track, which feels very Fantasia, though sadly is one of the film's shortest. Blue Bayou, which was actually a segment chopped from Fantasia, with the original Claire de Lune track substituted for a new track, which doesn't work anywhere near as well, by the way, and the beautifully touching Johnny Fedora and Alice Bluebonnet, which, though displaying limited animation, is one of the standouts of the era. With some shorts running for about 5 or 6 minutes, some, such as Peter and the Wolf and the Whale Who Wanted to Sing, running for 15, and some running for only 1 or 2, the complete lack of consistency in the feature and the sporadic nature of its pacing make the entire thing an incredibly weird, laborious, and frustrating feat to trudge through. 4. Melody Time. Taking on essentially the same configuration as Make Mine Music, Melody Time presents quite a few of the same issues. Shorts with varying lengths and absolutely no concise thread tying them together. Initially, it was supposed to be an anthology of American folk heroes, though somewhere along the way that idea was dropped and only 2 segments were left in: The Legend of Johnny Appleseed and Pecos Bill, the latter of which is an absolute treat as an individual short, but again, due to its length, makes the film feel a little uneven. Regardless, there are a number of great shorts in here. Once Upon a Wintertime is a stunning little short, which shows an early example of Mary Blair's exquisite art style. Bumblebee Boogie is a surreal Fantasia-esque segment set to a jazz variation of Flight of the Bumblebee and is an absolute treat. Blame It on the Samba is an extension of the Latin American films and is one of the best sequences featuring Donald and José. And Trees is another incredibly visionary short showcasing brilliant animation effects of the kind not seen in the era before. Just like Make Mine Music, Melody Time can be a struggle to get through due to its inconsistencies, but for the pure fact that the experimentation of animation and animation effects is seen across most of the shorts, albeit subtly, it is a markedly more enjoyable feature. 3. Fun and Fancy Free. Unlike most of the package features, Fun and Fancy Free presents 2 35-ish minute segments stuck together with live-action book-ending sequences. Firstly, the film presents Bongo, the story of a circus bear who wishes to live in the wild, and secondly, Mickey and the Beanstalk, a retelling of Jack and the Beanstalk starring Mickey, Donald and Goofy. Both shorts were being prepared as individual features before the war, with most of the animation on Beanstalk already completed and script work completed on Bongo. The pairing of these two vastly different stories does seem a little bit odd until you realize that they were simply just shoved together as they were both in fairly advanced production stages and the studio just wanted to get something out quickly. The story of Bongo is the lesser of the two. Narratively, it's incredibly thin and overly cutesy, and it's quite obvious why it was relegated to a short. In regards to animation, it's fairly simplistic and basic, much like Dumbo, whose animation was similarly scaled back to reduce production costs. Mickey and the Beanstalk, however, is incredibly fun and entertaining and easily one of the best shorts to come from any of the package features. Again, more than likely because it was produced on a decent budget with higher quality animation prior to the wartime, offering some of the best animation from the wartime era and making the film all the more enjoyable to sit through. 2. The Three Caballeros. This follow-up to Saludos Amigos is another result of Disney's early 40s Goodwill tour of the Latin Americas. Unlike Saludos, however, Three Caballeros is a wonderfully spectacular film that does everything the former aimed to do in a more entertaining and culturally respectful way, straying from the propaganda advert formula and instead focusing on a series of wonderful animated segments that truly capture the spirit and culture of Latin America. The movie, all in all, is a spectacular display of early Disney animation and, in a similar vein to Fantasia, fantastically uses music to tell its story and evoke the emotions and values of the countries at hand. Unlike the first, Caballeros finds a way to be subtle and not blatant, introducing its audience to the Latin American cultures by way of carefully crafted segments with fun and exciting music and brilliant animation. And unlike many of the package films, Caballeros has a proper thematic, with shorts that feel consistent, well thought out, and actually strung together with clear ideas and narrative meanings. Caballeros was also the first feature-length full-length Disney film to blend cel animation with live-action performance, and the sequences featuring Donald Duck, Jose Carioca, and Panchito Postales alongside Aurora Miranda are not only technologically innovative, but highly enjoyable and captivating. And coming in as my #1 favourite feature of the Disney wartime era, The Adventures of Ichabod and Mr. Toad. Releasing in 1949 as the final wartime film, only 1 year before Cinderella, the first of Disney's Silver Age, The Adventures of Ichabod and Mr. Toad is easily the most entertaining, best produced, and most enjoyable package feature. Much like Fun and Fancy Free, the film presents 2 individual shorts of about 32 minutes each. The Wind in the Willows, based on the classic novel by Kenneth Grahame and narrated by Basil Rathbone, and The Legend of Sleepy Hollow, based on the novel by Washington Irving and narrated in song by Bing Crosby, making it one of the very first films to utilise famous cast in voice roles. Much like Fun and Fancy Free, these 2 shorts were initially prepped as full-length features but packaged together as a pair of literary adaptations focusing on iconic characters following troubled productions on both. Wind in the Willows in particular had been in and out of various stages of production for 8 years. The Wind in the Willows segment is probably the lesser of the 2. It's quite cutesy with simple animation, partly the reason Walt ordered for it to be cut down. But overall, it's very funny with engaging characters and great storytelling. Legend of Sleepy Hollow, on the other hand, is quite wonderful. The animation is beautiful and the design is first class, due to funds and talent being a little freer towards the end of the era. Experimentation with animation is clear for the first time since the early 40s, with the Headless Horseman segment in particular an outstanding showcase of the medium. As a whole, Adventures works incredibly well. The stories complement each other perfectly despite being a stitching of troubled ideas, and overall the film is the most fun of the era, with great animation for the most part and great music too. It's a clear precursor to what was to follow, with sparks of magic that made the Silver Age so spectacular. And at that, it's over to you. I want to know, how do you personally rank the Disney wartime era package features? Which ones do you love? Which ones do you love not so much? Throw away in the comments below with your own rankings and personal thoughts. If this is your first time viewing one of my videos and you'd like to see more like it in the future, then please don't forget to hit that big old subscribe button up on your screen, as well as that like button down below for that little extra support. Also, don't forget to check me out on social media, and please consider supporting me over on Patreon. Thanks for watching and have a fantastic day.